the video, that is the first time detectives learned that there was actually 4 people in that gray Jeep, and that the defendant, Jamel Demons, is in the rear driver's side seat.
New footage just dropped, and it's about to flip the entire YNW Melly case upside down. For the very first time, we're seeing exactly what went down that bloody night with Bortlen and Melly. And trust me, this footage changes everything. But here's the wild twist. One of the crew straight up turned on his own homie when they hit that dead end. October 26, 2018, 2 best friends walked into the night thinking it was just another grind session in the studio, chasing music dreams and ducking street problems. But by sunrise, both of them were gone, laid out lifeless, and the very brother they trusted most was locked up facing double murder charges. This ain't just another rap beef. This is a real story of how fast money, fast fame, and cutthroat street politics twisted brotherhood into pure bloodshed. The YNW crew had been tight since they were kids running wild in Gifford, Florida, a place where loyalty kept you breathing, and betrayal could have you 6 feet under before sundown. Melly, real name Jamel Demons, was blowing up heavy off his hit Murder on My Mind, with the streets finally putting respect on his name. But behind the fame, trouble was bubbling. His day ones weren't clapping for him anymore, they were counting dollars. YNW sack chaser Anthony Williams, just 21, and YNW juvie Christopher Thomas Jr., only 19, had been riding with Melly since forever. They came up through the same poverty, the same violence, the same broken dreams. But success don't always mean peace. Sometimes it breeds envy. And the beef? It was straight over money. When Melly signed that deal with 300 Entertainment in July 2018, bagging somewhere between $200,000 and $500,000, the mood shifted fast. His homies felt iced out, like they'd been left in the cold after grinding by his side for years. Texts later pulled by the feds showed Sack Chaser pressing him hard, saying, "You blowing up? We still eating crumbs? Pay up or we done." That's not just frustration, that's a death threat in hood language. In Gifford, loyalty is everything. Turning your back can make you a target overnight. The YNW crew had been molded in that environment, built on blood, pain, and ambition. They had already seen friends gunned down.
The vibes look decent, I'm gonna be honest with you. It don't look like nobody kind of beefing, nobody look too excited. You know, if somebody kind of got into it, like, they might be like, they're not just walking normal. Like, everybody looks kind of chill.
Already carried caskets, already lost too many. For years, the YNW crew moved like a family. One man's win was supposed to be everybody's win. But the music game has a nasty way of flipping people, and Melly's rocket ride to fame started cracking bonds that once looked unbreakable. His collab with Kanye West on Mixed Personalities blasted him into another stratosphere. Doors swinging open for Melly that his childhood friends couldn't even touch. The glow-up was flashy.
The Sack Chaser, where does he get in? Good. Remember they said it was a gray vehicle. He gets into, this is Juvie, I said, right? He gets into the front right side.
Icy chains, foreign cars, and celebrity link-ups. But that spotlight only made the shadows around him darker. Back in Gifford, his homies were still living the same grind. Ducking police, hustling for scraps.
Melly comes, and Melly goes to the back passenger. Yeah.
And trying to keep their heads above water while Melly was snapping pics with rap legends. That kind of gap don't just sting, it cuts deep. On top of that, the street politics were heating up. The crew repped as YNW Bloods, aka the Gifford Slimes. And in that world, respect and resources came with rank.
He even shot through the seat multiple times, and there was no defense wounds to be like, stop. You get me? It was that quick. Bang, 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 bang. That quick.
But Melly's solo fame was shaking up the whole hierarchy. The set didn't care about Billboard charts. They cared about structure and respect, and Melly's rise was messing with both. Resentment wasn't just brewing inside his circle, it was spreading through the whole network like wildfire. That left Melly trapped between 2 deadly choices: loyalty to his day one friends or loyalty to the set. And that pressure cooker was about to explode. That fatal night, the crew linked at New Era recording studios, laying down tracks like it was just another grind session. By the time they wrapped, the surveillance footage looked calm. 4 homies sliding out together like nothing was wrong. But the streets know better. Still waters run deep. Behind the poker faces, betrayal was already in motion. At 4:08 a.m., cameras caught the crew hopping into that rented gray Jeep Compass. None of them knew it yet, but the way they sat in that car would later map out exactly who was strapped in for the ride of their life and who was strapped in for a ride straight to the grave. The footage tells it all. Sack Chaser stepped right into what the streets call the death seat. No idea he was sitting in the hottest spot of his life. Meanwhile, cameras caught Melly sliding into the back left, the position prosecutors would later label the perfect execution seat. Sitting right behind the driver, he had both his day ones lined up in front of him, wide open targets with nowhere to run. And according to the DA, this wasn't luck, it was cold calculation. As the Jeep rolled down dark back roads near Miramar Parkway, sometime between 4:10 and 4:20 a.m., the silence shattered. Prosecutors say Melly pulled the trigger from that back seat, letting off rounds point blank. It all went down in seconds. Too fast for either of them to even process what was happening. Sack Chaser got hit 8 times, dome, chest, neck, with fatal shots ripping straight through him. Juvie didn't escape either. 4 bullets tore into him, just as deadly.
To stage the shooting, because they believe people were already dead, they hopped out the car and then they shot up the car afterwards, and they believe those bullet casings they found at that spot was a .40 caliber.
The medical examiner's autopsy was chilling. Stippling and unburnt gunpowder around the wounds proved the shots were fired close enough to feel the heat, and no defensive wounds meant neither of them even flinched. They never saw it coming. They thought they were cruising with their brother till the last second of their lives. One wound stood out most, Sack Chaser's fatal headshot. The bullet entered through the back of his skull and ripped out the top. With so much force, it blew through the front passenger window. Juvie was blasted in the left cheek.
And Mr. Demmons responds very succinctly, "I did that."
The trajectory showing he was facing forward, never suspecting the danger breathing down his neck. The angles, the wounds, the close range, everything screamed setup. It painted a picture of ruthless, calculated betrayal that left even hardened homicide detectives stunned. What made this whole crime even more chilling was the planning behind it. This wasn't no heat-of-the-moment beef. This was mapped out step by step. The location itself told the story. A dark, secluded stretch with 0 cameras, 0 bystanders, and 0 chance of outside eyes. Prosecutors said that alone screamed premeditation. The way both victims were lit up, multiple shots, bullets ripping through seats even after their bodies dropped, showed this wasn't a crime of passion. This was execution style. No struggle, no defensive wounds, just complete ambush with the element of surprise fully on the shooter's side. Then came the aftermath, and that's where it got even colder. Forensics later proved some of those bullets were fired after Sack Chaser and Juvie were already dead. That meant the crime scene was being staged right there in real time. The shooter wasn't panicking. He was thinking ahead, covering tracks, and plotting the next step like it was all part of the plan. The DA called it straight-up stone-cold killer behavior, and what happened next proved why. After allegedly dropping his own brothers, the shooter and his crew didn't speed off in shock. Nah, they calmly drove to a remote cut, hopped out the Jeep, and started lighting it up from the outside with a different gun.
And they sit and they walk side by side for an hour, that mile-long stretch, looking for evidence of this drive-by. Because evidence is the remnants a crime leaves behind. And in this case, the lack of evidence is very important.
They were trying to script a fake drive-by, like some random ops had slid up on them. Cold, calculated, and straight deceptive. By 4:35 a.m., YNW Bortlen rolled into Memorial Hospital Miramar with 2 dead bodies in the car like it was nothing. Cool as ice, he walked in and told doctors and cops they got hit in a drive-by. But Melly? He was ghost. Prosecutors say he slipped away right after the staged drive-by, leaving Bortlen to pull up at the hospital with 2 bodies and a made-up story. Cool and collected, Bortlen tried to sell the random shooter's tale, but the cracks started showing fast. The real smoking gun didn't come from the streets, though. It came from social media. Once word spread about the murders, people started hitting up Melly, asking if he was okay. And when one close friend asked what went down, prosecutors claimed Melly's reply was straight cold, just 2 chilling words. "I did that." The DA would later point to it as nothing less than a digital confession to taking out his own day ones. And the motive? Both the DA and the streets agreed. That toxic cocktail of cash, jealousy, and street politics. Melly's sudden come-up created serious money problems inside the squad. And worse, it threatened the balance of power inside their blood set. All four were tied into the YNW Bloods, also known as the Gifford Slimes. And in that world, loyalty and money can't clash for long. Someone always ends up in a box. The most heartbreaking part? These weren't random rivals or neighborhood ops. These were his brothers. Melly had their names tattooed on his face while they were still alive, showing the world they were ride or die. They dreamed of making it out together, built each other up through the grind, and survived the chaos of Gifford side by side. These weren't just homies. They were family in every way but blood. Yet before the bodies even cooled, detectives already knew this wasn't some sloppy hood drive-by.
Video. That is the first time detectives learned that there was actually 4 people in that gray Jeep. And that the defendant, Jamel Demons, is in the rear driver's side seat.
The evidence that started piling up told a darker truth. A cover-up so detailed it almost fooled everyone. And in that cover-up, investigators saw just how far somebody was willing to go to silence the very people who knew him best. The investigation cracked everything wide open. What first looked like just another hood shooting quickly turned into one of the most complex forensic puzzles Florida had ever seen. Detectives uncovered what they called next-level plotting. A cover-up so detailed it nearly tricked the entire system into believing the lie. When Miramar PD pulled up to the hospital, the first move was to lock down that gray Jeep. Then they sat Bortlen down and pressed him for answers. His story? Straight out the street playbook. He claimed they were leaving the studio when some random shooters pulled up on him and sprayed the car. Sounded believable at first, until investigators actually checked the scene. Cops shut down the whole stretch of Miramar Parkway between 160 and 172. They walked that mile of road for over an hour, combing for any sign of a wild shootout. Shells, glass, stray bullets, anything. But they found nothing. Not one casing, not one broken shard of glass, not even a skid mark. It was like the drive-by never happened. So investigators widened the search another mile, determined to find some kind of trail. Still nothing. And that's when the red flags lit up, because the Jeep itself told a totally different story.
Because at that location is where the cell phones of Christopher Thomas, Anthony Williams, and Jamel Demons all line up at 4:02 a.m. That point, afterwards, Mr. Demons' phone tracks with the 2 victims until about 4:20.
Riddled with 16 bullet holes, a blown-out rear window, and both side windows shot through like Swiss cheese. To seasoned detectives, the math wasn't adding up. Drive-bys always leave chaos behind. Shell casings scattered across the pavement, glass shattered all over the road, bullets lodged in walls or parked cars, and rubber burned into the asphalt. But here, zero. Clean pavement, no debris, no sign of a chase or ambush. That absence of evidence screamed louder than any witness could. For investigators who had worked hundreds of these cases, it was practically impossible. The Jeep showed clear damage from heavy gunfire, but the streets where it supposedly happened were spotless. With that much gunfire, the scene should have been lit up with evidence. Bullets punching straight through the Jeep should have left marks on the asphalt, guardrails, or even ripped into nearby trees. But detectives found nothing, not a single impact. That absence spoke volumes. Then came the glass. Crime scene techs noted something that didn't sit right. The Jeep's shattered windows didn't match the story of a highway ambush. Normally, when a car gets sprayed on the move, the glass explodes outward in a predictable pattern along the road. But here, no fragments anywhere. It was too clean, too staged. Investigators realized those windows had been blasted out somewhere else entirely. That's when they flipped the playbook and worked backwards. They retraced the crew's steps to New Era recording studios. And that's where the smoking gun lived. The studio had cameras all over the place, recording every move. The footage didn't just poke holes, it blew the whole story apart. First off, Bortlen never said a word about Melly being in the Jeep.
Why is that important? That shows a gun was fired inside of that car.
But the tape showed otherwise, which meant if bullets really rained down, Melly should have been hit too, unless he wasn't a victim at all. And then the timestamps. Surveillance showed the crew walking out at 3:19 a.m., not the earlier time Bortlen had given police. That alone killed his credibility. But the biggest giveaway? Their behavior. All 4 strolled out the studio looking calm, relaxed, and casual, like they had no worries in the world, no arguments, no paranoia, no sense of danger, nothing that would hint they were about to get ambushed on the road. The studio's inside cameras told another story, and it wasn't the one Bortlen was selling. The footage showed all four men vibing together, working on music, laughing, moving like brothers. No beef, no tension, nothing close to the kind of argument that could have sparked sudden violence. Their body language was easy, their interactions normal. That destroyed any theory that this was some heated fight gone wrong. But the biggest red flag? Bortlen forgot to even mention that Melly was in the Jeep during his first talks with police. That wasn't some tiny slip-up. It was a major lie of omission. If he was lying about who was in the ride, detectives figured he could be lying about everything else too. From that moment, the whole case shifted. Then investigators went high-tech, digging into cell phone data, and that's where the truth started screaming louder than any witness ever could. The digital trail they uncovered ended up being more damaging than a snitch on the stand. Cell tower pings showed all three phones.
When the drive-by was staged at 4:02 a.m., the victims were already dead.
Mellies, sack chasers, and juvies at the exact same remote spot near US 27 and Pembroke Road at 4:02 a.m. And they stayed there for 18 minutes, right in the window when prosecutors say the murders went down. At 4:20 a.m., the phones started moving again, together. Then came the split. One phone veered off while the others headed straight to the hospital. That separation matched perfectly with the story prosecutors were building. One car handling the bodies, another car peeling off. The tower data was so precise, it gave detectives a play-by-play of the night's movements, almost minute by minute. The phones traced the vehicles riding together across Interstate 595, then breaking apart at Miramar Parkway and 184th Street. One signal carried on toward the Sunset Lakes gated community, a known hangout for associates. The digital trail got even deeper. Turns out Melly and Sack Chaser were using the exact same phone model on the same service plan, letting investigators map their movements with pinpoint accuracy. The data showed both phones at the remote location during the murders, then splitting, one heading back toward the city, the other to the hospital. But the phones told more than just location. Melly's device logged step counts. 70 steps at the studio, another 70 steps around 4:02 a.m., the murder window, and nearly 1,400 steps between 4:42 and 4:53 a.m., suggesting heavy movement when he was allegedly arranging a pickup from the scene. Ballistics backed it all up. Spent shell casings inside the Jeep proved shots were fired from within the vehicle, killing the drive-by story once and for all. At the remote spot tied to the phones, detectives found 8 more .40 caliber casings.
YNW Bortlen, he could took the deal. Where did I leave Melly though, brother? Where did I leave YNW Melly and the case?
Forensics showed 2 separate shootings, the deadly shots inside the Jeep, then the stage shots outside to fake a drive-by. Even the calibers told a story. Casings inside the Jeep didn't match the ones at the staging site.
Counts 1 and 2 is murder in the first degree with a firearm. Those are capital offenses. The maximum and mandatory penalty is life in Florida State Prison. Counts 3 and 4 are accessory after the fact to murder in the first degree. Those are each first degree felonies. The maximum penalty is 30 years in Florida State Prison.
That meant multiple guns, deliberate planning, and an attempt to muddy the ballistics trail. Ballistics told the story. The fatal shots came from inside the Jeep, fired from the rear left passenger seat. The exact spot surveillance showed Melly sitting. The angles lined up perfectly with someone blasting across the car toward the front passenger and rear seat. These weren't wild shots, they were precise. And with no defensive wounds, investigators knew the victims never saw it coming. The drive-by staging crumbled too. At the remote site, bullet holes were clustered on the passenger side, but the trajectories proved they weren't from a moving car. They were fired from a fixed spot outside, and the autopsy made it even darker. Those external wounds came after death. The bodies were shot post-mortem to fake a drive-by. That meant someone staged the scene by firing into corpses. Then came the digital trail. At the staging location, Melly allegedly FaceTimed his girl and dropped location pins for a pickup, building his alibi in real time. It was damning. But when the state brought all this to court, the case still hit a wall. When the case went to trial in 2023, it ended in a hung jury. 8 guilty, 4 not guilty. The missing murder weapon, shaky motive, and sloppy police work created enough doubt to stall a conviction. For years, Melly and Bortlen held the same line. They were victims of a drive-by, but loyalty cracks when life sentences stack up. After 6 years of silence, everything broke. On September 9th, 2025, and just hours before his trial, YNW Bortlen flipped. he took a plea deal that could put Melly on death row.
Now, I know some of y'all are super thugged out in here. A life sentence. What? But when he was only facing 30 years, he was like, They added the murder charges afterwards to make that nigga know, oh, you think we only want Melly? We'll fry you too. I think that made him think a little bit different.
For years, he stood solid, but facing 5 life sentences plus 75 years, the math changed. Bortlen's case snowballed fast. What began as accessory charges turned into 2 first-degree murder counts, plus witness tampering and gang activity. Prosecutors played it like chess.
In exchange for that, I'm going to adjudicate you guilty on the 2 accessory counts as well as the tampering count. I'm going to sentence you to 10 years in Florida State Prison. That will be followed by 6 years of reporting probation.
Stacking pressure step by step. At first, he was only facing accessory time, heavy but survivable. But when Melly's conviction slipped out of reach, the state escalated. The murder charges changed everything. In Florida, first-degree murder means automatic life.
I guess at some point after the fact, the state wants to take a proffer from you or have a discussion with you, ask you some questions about whatever that may be.
With no parole, no deals, no judge's mercy. For someone already stuck in jail for years, the thought of never walking free again became the breaking point. Add in witness tampering and gang activity.
Pleading to an accessory to murder after the fact, you have to acknowledge that the murder happened and you assisted someone or in some way to cover the murder.
And suddenly Bortlen was looking at multiple life sentences. The strategy was clear. Turn his case from winnable to hopeless. And it worked. Prosecutors broke him down until cooperation was the only card left to play. Under the plea deal, Bortlen dodged both murder charges. Instead, he pled to 2 counts of accessory after the fact, 1 count of witness tampering in a capital case, and 1 count of unlawful use of a communication device. In return, prosecutors dropped the charges that could have guaranteed life without parole or the death penalty. But the real cost wasn't the reduced time. It was what he had to give up, the proffer, a sworn statement forcing him to spill everything he knows. By pleading guilty to accessory charges, Bortlen legally admitted the murders happened and that he helped cover them up. That alone destroys the defense's claim of a random drive-by. His plea also confirmed he was inside the Jeep when it all went down, giving prosecutors more ammo. With credit for time served and good behavior, he could walk free in 3 to 5 years instead of never leaving prison alive. The proffer is deadly for Melly's defense. In a Queen for a Day session, Bortlen must truthfully answer every question about October 26, 2018. Any lie voids the deal and throws the original charges back on him. Bortlen's testimony now carries the full weight of sworn statements. If he lies, he loses his deal and faces life. That makes his cooperation deadly for Melly. After years of standing side by side, the pressure of dying behind bars broke their bond for good. Street code says you never fold, but when the choice is freedom or a pine box, even the toughest start thinking about self-preservation. For Melly, locked down since February 2019, Bortlen's betrayal is the ultimate blow.
Y'all know Melly didn't kill his 2 best friends. Like, come on. Like, we go through this every time with us, culture, being black, artists. Y'all know we targeted.
His retrial, scheduled for January 2027, will likely feature Bortlen's insider account, the missing puzzle piece prosecutors wanted all along. The case shows how the system can crush loyalty. Melly's team insists he's innocent, blasting prosecutors for railroading him and turning his brother against him. They argue an innocent man is being hunted simply because he's a young black artist in America. Y'all know Melly didn't kill his 2 best friends. Like, come on. We go through this every time. In this culture, being a black artist means being targeted, his supporters say. But the math of Bortlen's situation was clear. Years already served, the threat of never walking free again.
Melly looks defeated, man. It's been 7 years, bro. It's been 7 years. He looks defeated, bro. He looks defeated.
Versus taking a deal that could put him back with family in a few years. Loyalty versus survival. He chose survival. The toll is visible on both men. When Melly appeared in court, years of harsh confinement showed on his face. 6 years behind bars, much of it in isolation, has left him worn down, both mentally and physically. Experts warn that these conditions alone can break a person before a verdict is ever reached. So what do you think? Did Bortlen betray a brother or just play the only card he had left? Is Melly a victim of a broken system or guilty of the coldest betrayal in hip-hop? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe so you never miss the next breakdown.